first question, then, in which case, I guess, is your background. How did you start getting into becoming an author?
Well, probably like everyone who ends up as an author, I kind of always wanted to be. Books were always hugely important to me as a child, for as long as I can remember. And it was always my kind of ambition. So all my way through school, I was scribbling away notebooks and writing stories and so on. But then when it came time to sort of decide what I wanted to do as a career, I knew what I wanted to do was to be an author, to write novels. But, you know, I was told probably by a well-meaning careers advisor that it wasn't a very sensible career choice.
I've few of those.
So, yeah, not very, not guaranteed work. So I was quite good at sciences, so I ended up doing a physics degree at university, and ended up working in the health service as an audiologist, so working with hearing and balance impaired people, but specifically hearing in my case. But the writing was always there in the kind of background. It's something at first I thought I'll keep it as a hobby and one day return to it a bit more seriously. But, you know, as with many jobs, as I got more and more senior in my profession, I found I was getting busier and busier, and more, not even so much the number of hours I was spent doing the day job, but more the psychic energy it was taking meant that I didn't really have anything left over at the end of the day to sit down and make stories up. And so that was really suffering. And it all kind of reached a crunch point. A kind of number of things came together. I was approaching my 40th birthday, so that felt a bit like a milestone and a time to reevaluate where I was in my life. I was deputy head of a department and my boss was about to retire, so I was kind of looking at perhaps getting a promotion. And I just realised that the promotion was just wasn't what I wanted, and what I wanted to do was to write books. So I thought, you know, I've got to take it a bit more seriously for a while. So I went part-time at work, and sort of I said to myself, I'll give myself 5 years. And if I'm not getting anywhere in 5 years, if I'm no nearer to being published in 5 years, then I'll go back to the day job in a serious way. But then Before I Go to Sleep happened, like it just landed on my desk, and I was lucky enough that I didn't have to return to the day job. So yeah, that's the shortish version.
Very good. And this is your latest book is now your third book, is it? Sorry, just
yes, Final Cut is my third book. Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. And is it something that you've been building towards? Are they linked together? Sorry, I'm not too sure about the
Before I Go to Final Cut, no, yes and no. It's a strange one. With Final Cut, I kind of wanted to move away, because my first two books were very sort of domestic. They were both set in London largely. And so with this book, I wanted to introduce some new elements to my writing. So with Final Cut, I wanted to introduce landscape, and I wanted to introduce a smaller community and sort of a more rural setting, and also write about somebody who was away from her home and away from her kind of comfort zone. But strangely, in doing that, I kind of found myself returning back to some of the themes of Before I Go to Sleep, which is very much around memory and identity and what makes us who we are, and and how that can change depending on the situation that we're in. And so weirdly, the two books, to me, Before I Go to Sleep and Final Cut, do feel sort of related. They're not related in terms of having the same characters or even the same story sort of area, but they are related in the themes that they explore, I suppose. So yeah.
Brilliant. Are you able to give us a sort of synopsis, just a brief synopsis of what?
Yeah. So with Final Cut follows the story of a filmmaker called Alex. She's a documentary filmmaker, and she goes to a village in the north of England, which is very much based on Robin Hood's Bay, but not Robin Hood's Bay, for reasons that will become apparent during the book. But she goes there to make a new film, which she wants to in which she wants to explore ordinary everyday life of people, just average people. And she wants to do it by inviting them to upload footage of their own lives to a central server, which she'll then sort of edit into a final film. So essentially she wants to invite people to use their camera phones and so on to tell their own story. But on getting there, she discovers that there is a sort of dark secret in the village, in terms of there was a girl that went missing about 10 years previously, and another girl who was thought to have taken her own life by jumping off the cliffs. And as we get into the story, and as she gets further into the story and further into the films that people are uploading, she discovers that it's a difficult book to talk about without spoilers, but something is still going on in the village, shall we say, and that she is perhaps more involved than she'd realised.
Very good. Sounds very thrilling. Is it Robin Hood Bay? That's
it's North Yorkshire.
North Yorkshire, isn't it? Yeah. I used to live in Yorkshire, so I'm just trying to remind myself whereabouts that is.
Yeah, no, it's between Whitby and Scarborough, basically. So
okay.
It's a very beautiful place, and it's full of very lovely people, I'm sure. But Blackwood Bay, which is the fictional version in the book, is not full of lovely people, which is why I changed the name.
Why you changed the name?
Yeah.
So, is this? Have you been working on another book to follow this, or is this just a one-off?
Yeah, I have actually. I was very lucky in terms of lockdown. You know, last year's. I'm talking about now, because I was about to start a new book anyway. I'd sort of given myself the first 3 months of 2020 to plan a book, and I was due to start writing it on April the 1st. I hope that's not an auspicious date, but anyway. And so when, you know, in the middle of March, when the lockdown was announced, actually, it affected me much less than it might have done otherwise, because I just kind of decided I would use that time to get my head down and write a book. So yeah, so I finished it a few weeks ago, finished the edit, finished my edit. It's now with my editor, so I'm sure there'll definitely be more work to do, obviously. But yeah, so I'm hopefully the next one will be out. Probably not this year, to be honest, because the publishing world moves quite slowly, especially during a pandemic. But I would hope next year.
Very good. Did you find it interesting experience writing a book during last year? I know that a few authors have said online that they found it extremely difficult, just not having the interaction with people, if that makes sense, not being able to speak to people and get ideas. And
I can totally see that, because what I do love to do is to go out with my notebook and sort of just sit in a coffee shop somewhere, especially in London, and just observe people and note things down and just let my mind kind of wander. And of course, you know, I was also very fortunate in that the house I was living in at the time was very beautiful in the middle of nowhere. So lockdown didn't really affect me on that level, in terms of at least I was locked down in a very nice place to be, you know. But yeah, it did affect me in as much as I couldn't go out and make those observations and sort of get that sort of stimulus from the outside world. And of course, watching the news can just send you into a spiral of kind of, well, what's the point of doing anything? So, but I think I was very lucky though, because I'd planned the book and it was all in my head, kind of pretty much fully formed. I found I could just get my head down and write quite well. I think if I was at the stage of, well, what am I going to write next? What will the next story be? What will the next characters? Who will the next characters be? I think that would have been very difficult to actually get the motivation during lockdown to get up and do all of that work. But I was lucky in that actually it was kind of a way that, you know, all the meetings I would have normally had around the publication of Final Cut were on Zoom. You know, all the book events were on Zoom or something like that, a bit like this one, you know, which is a shame, because I do miss going out and meeting people and sort of you know, talking to readers and so on. But it also did mean that I spent less time sitting on trains and traveling between events. So that was time I could use to write. So I was very fortunate, but I can totally understand why people who were at a different stage in the process, it would have been very, very debilitating.
Very, very much so. So you said about social media over the last year. Am I correct in thinking that you have your own book club on?
Yeah, it's a new thing for me, really. It kind of, I think it's only been going for about a month. And it kind of came from, I was very taken by the Tim Burgess's Twitter listening parties. I don't know if you come across them, but they're really good fun. And basically what happens is everybody, you know, obviously he announces which album, which record people are going to be listening to, and then we all press play at the same time and listen to the tracks as they you know, come on and comment and chat, and there's usually the artist or someone involved in making the record is online as well. And it's just really good fun, and I found it a very bonding experience. And then a friend of mine, ironically or not ironically, but coincidentally, and also a sort of a friend who I don't ever, very rarely see, but we're online friends. He just said, it would be great if there's something about this for books. And that just started my mind thinking it would actually. And I thought, well, obviously it can't be exactly the same model, because you can't all, start on page 1 at 9 o'clock on a Sunday evening and then read in unison. But I thought actually what I can do is I can just create a place on Twitter where we all congregate to talk about a book that we've loved. And invite the author along to come and add their perspective. So yeah, it's gone quite well actually. I'm enjoying it, and I think other people are as well. I've had lots of people on Mark Billingham's, Ian Rankin, people like that have done one. David Nichols, Paula Hawkins. So yeah, it's really good, and I do think it's. Maybe people talk about Twitter as being quite a negative place. I think it can be. But I think book Twitter seems to be a really lovely place. Well, that's certainly been my experience of it anyway. So maybe I've just muted all the people that aren't very nice. But
I was going to say, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, it's that mute button is quite useful sometimes.
I think it is, yeah.
We've been quite lucky, obviously, over the last year with the London Bookshop Crawl. We had last year's London Bookshop Crawl in February, obviously, so just before everything sort of nosedived, so to speak.
Yeah.
And our experience has been very interesting in that we realized straight away that bookshops were really going to be struggling. I know you mentioned just before we started recording this about Brighton, that you've moved to Brighton. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
That's the bookshops you've not actually been able to go to. Simply.
No, I haven't. I was looking forward to exploring the independent bookshops, especially all the bookshops, but especially the independent ones, and they've all been closed since I've been in. But yeah, it's very difficult.
I mean, that's something that we've been trying to, that's the reason why we started doing this year, doing an online version of what we usually do in person. I think that's something that we felt quite passionately about. We wanted to try and make sure that we could support bookshops in some way, shape or form, which doing things like this with great authors like yourself, you're very appreciated.
Thank you very much. But I think it's, I think social media rightly gets a lot of stick sometimes, the way it can be used in a negative way, and it can be a time, a drain on people's time and so on. But I think what we've seen over the last year is actually a good way. It can be a good thing as well, because I don't know about you, but I think I would have gone absolutely mad without the ability to do things like this and to have Zoom or FaceTime or whatever chats with family and friends and things, So yeah, I think it has also shown that it's a good way of connecting with people.
Very good. Now, what we've been getting quite a lot of people to do is we've been recording that 5 quick bookish questions. These are all quick fire questions, so short answers, if you will. And you've very kindly agreed that you're going to do yours this way, which is great. So the first question was your name and where are you from? Obviously, we've answered that. So I won't go into too much detail about that one. But the second one is, what do you like most about bookshops?
I think what I like most is just really, I don't know, there's something about being surrounded by books, and books I haven't read and books I'd like to read and books I'm curious about. And I think that's something you don't get online. You can log onto a bookstore online, but it's generally to buy a particular book that you're looking for. Whereas I think I just like losing myself in bookshops and just browsing, and then I always have to buy a book, even though I've got so many books. I think I could read one a day for the rest of my life and not run out. But yeah, I think just the whole experience and being surrounded by people who love books as well, it just feels very sort of they feel a very happy place to me, very calming.
Very calming. There's some great bookshops in London where we've been, where we travel around every year, and some of our favourites are places like Word on the Water. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a bookshop on a barge. With a log burning fire in the centre of it. Very atmospheric. So I can understand exactly what you mean about that sort of experience. What is your favourite? Sorry, this is the next question. What is your favourite bookish find? So it could be something like a statue or a place that you've been, somewhere that you've found a bookish link, if that makes sense.
Well, I think There are two really. I was going to say I really love the book Swimming Pool Library, the Swimming Pool Library, Alan Hollinghurst, and I found the first edition, first printing of that. So that's one bookish find. But I actually also found, I think it was one of the things that strikes me is I found a bench that had an inscription on it, a poem, and this is when I was about to finish before I go to sleep, and I was looking for the epigraph to put in the front. And this poem was absolutely perfect. And that it felt, I'm not a believer in fate, but it felt like serendipity perhaps, that I just happened to be wandering this particular park and found this particular bench. And the strange thing is, my publisher still to this day, we don't know where the poem came from.
Oh, wow.
As in, you know, we tried to get permission to use it, but we can't even find any evidence of the writer even existing.
Oh.
So that's probably, I suppose that's slightly arrogant to choose something that relates to one of my own books, but
no, not at all. No, I mean that's like you said earlier on, that's how you get your ideas, isn't it? You find
absolutely, yeah.
Moments like that where you find things that you weren't expecting. It's great.
Yeah.
The next question, I've done them in a funny order. Usually we ask a favorite bookshop as well. So is there a favorite bookshop that you have that somewhere in?
A bit like asking if there's a favourite child, it feels like I'm betraying all of the others, but I will always have a soft spot for Gaze the Word. On, is it Marchmont Street?
I think it is, yes.
Yeah.
Just around the corner from the British Library.
Exactly, yeah. I think, you know, the reasons are probably fairly obvious, but I think it feels like more than a bookshop. It feels like it represents something. And I remember when I first moved to London, I would walk past it as a closeted individual and wonder if I would ever have the confidence to go in. And of course, I do have that confidence now. And it always feels like a very sort of a place where not only where you go to look at books and to discover books, but also where you can go to sort of discover yourself, I think, as a young person especially. So I think Gaze the Word will get my vote as my favourite. But
I'm so pleased that someone has mentioned Gaze the Word. They're one of the loveliest bookshops we've been to as part of the crawl. Every year we've been and taken a group of people in there. And it's been lovely people to work with, and obviously an amazing movie as well, isn't it? Pride as well. That's
absolutely, yeah.
That's a good street actually for books as well, isn't it? Judd Books a few doors up from it as well.
That's right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's a lovely place in London to go. Well, thank you for your time. This has been much appreciated. I think the final question, and I think it's quite a poignant one to end on, is a book recommendation for 2021. Is there a particular book that's coming out this year, or one that's an old one that you may think of?
Yeah, I couldn't choose between three, so I'm going to go for three if that's right. Niven Govindan's new one is Diary of a Film, and it's out in February, and it's really beautiful, and I would highly recommend that. And then in March, I think, there's the book called The Lamplighters, which is by Emma, I think it's pronounced Stonix, which is a kind of a mix of a thriller, a ghost story, a love story. It's really atmospheric. It's about some lighthouse keepers who disappeared. It's based on a true story of some lighthouse keepers who disappeared off a lighthouse off the coast of Cornwall, I think. And then in April, so I'm looking at my notes, in April, there's a book called Tall Bones, which is another thriller. It's by Anna Bailey. It's a debut. And again, it's brilliantly atmospheric and very highly recommended. So those are my three. That's
perfect. That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your time and for all of that info. As I said to you before we were on air, it's been amazing this year getting to speak to people like this.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been good fun, so thank you. Hopefully in a future year, because we do usually do author talks and things like that during the crawl. We organise it with bookshops to arrange author talks, so hopefully we'll be in contact in the new year.
Yeah, I'd love that. That'd be great. But thank you for inviting me for this. It's been wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.